Welcome to Making Room, a podcast inspiring people to accelerate change by being a catalyst, honoring creativity, and acting with courage. We are making room for the greatest potential of our community.
Welcome, you are welcome here. Welcome to this open door, dear. Our hands are reaching out for you. The floor is clear and we've made room for you.
Welcome back to Making Room. This is, I say this a lot, that it's a treat, right, Shivani?
It is always a treat.
It is always a treat, but this is really special. Our first international global guest. Making Room has gone global because of today's guest, Beate Perrey. And I tell you what, when you travel, part of traveling is you just never know what's going to happen. And when you open yourself up to new experiences, I'm in Paris in September, and you all know how much I love music, especially the piano. And on this Airbnb experience, I see this classical piano experience in this woman's apartment, which is Beate, who's on screen today. And I just felt compelled to go check this out. And welcome, Beate, today to our show. And you welcomed us into your home, and that word is very important to us. And I'll tell you what, Shivani, I walked in, and my mind was honestly at that point going a mile a minute. I was Paris, the sights, there was so much going on. Mm-hmm. And as soon as she spoke, everything calmed down. And then she plays piano with two of us in the room. And it was just, Beate, I'm present to how grateful I am to you right now and for what you're doing and the power of music and settling people. So first, welcome, and we'd love to just hear a little more about how that experience came about. And how are you doing this morning? How's Paris first?
Well, thank you, Jon. I really remember you coming over, and since then, of course, we're now in December, so it's much colder in Paris. This experience really came about because I had run a concert series for quite a few years that was itself taking place in larger apartments with pianos. And I took some of my students, and we did evening concerts that were followed with, a drink afterwards and meeting people. And it was very clear when we started doing that is a very powerful way of bringing music to a public. And it really connects people directly with the music because they're much closer to the artists, rather than even a bigger concert hall that holds 50 people or 100 people. You're already quite removed. And when Airbnb contacted me whether I wanted to start this here in Paris, I said immediately yes, because it was something that I had already experimented with for several years. And so it started before the pandemic, about a year and a half before, and was just a wonderful way of, sharing my music and also having that chance to hear how the music vibrates in people, who are not necessarily great specialists, who happen to be in Paris for a few days and who are really interested in coming to a place where they can take a break and take a beat, actually, literally speaking, and really calm down and, enjoy something beautiful by, having an environment where they can leave for a moment, whatever worries they may have when coming in and anxieties, about the future or the past. And I think that is something that's missing in our lives, especially in a city like Paris, which is a city, that like a little bit like New York, hardly ever sleeps. it's a city of lights, so the lights are on all the time. Of course, it's beautiful for the Eiffel Tower and so on, but it's very important to recharge and to come to moments of stillness and to really have a moment to reconnect with yourself. And so this is the whole purpose of this experience.
When did you discover, whether it was as a young woman, when did you first experience the true beauty of music? Because you're in your element, and we're going to get to see that today for our audience. We're going to get a chance to experience some of this. But when your hands touch the keys, something happens inside you. And when's the first time that happened? What were you playing? Like, when did you discover your deep admiration for music and for beauty?
Well, thank you for that question. I was lucky to grow up with a mother who herself had learned a lot of songs in her school days, and she loved singing. And so we sang a lot of songs together. And I was born in France, as you know, but I grew up in Germany and then later a little bit in America. And in Germany, there is a lot of music available if you want that in your life. And my mother did want that in our life. And so she, together with a grade school teacher who was also very much into music and bringing us kids who were, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old through music, through playing the recorder, but on a really beautiful scale. And also she was an amazing teacher in the sense that every single school day would start, first of all, beyond, just as a priority, with us singing a song and learning a new song and learning what a canon is. For example, she would divide the group into 3 smaller groups, and then we would do these canons and discover harmony, what harmony is, through that practice. And so retrospectively, I realized how incredibly fortunate I was with particularly that grade school teacher. And so we also had records at home, and my mother loved going to concerts, so I came along with her, and she sang in a choir in a church, and I came along, and I just loved all those sounds that I heard, the organ as well. And in German churches, I'm of a Protestant background, so it was Johann Sebastian Bach, that the music by Johann Sebastian Bach that was played to a great majority in the services. So for me, there was never a moment of sort of, doubt or anything. I always thought that music is really the most mesmerizing, the most just wonderful. You can't, thing in the world.
Yeah.
I love the connection to your childhood memories as well. My kids are actually getting started this week to start piano lessons, but we can see so early on that music resonates with them, and that they kind of get transported to a different place when they are listening to certain music and singing or just absorbing that. So.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, it's
And you've been doing it at these large organizations, I mean, you've done it so intimately, but we've talked because of, the world has been through so much, and information is coming at us, whether in the U.S. related to, and all over the world related to COVID, related to racial reckoning, related to all forms of oppression, related to, education that we want for our kids and opportunities. And so we've talked some that corporations and big companies and nonprofits have come a long way from, okay, you're here to work, we want to get as much out of you as we can, to there's been this movement around self-awareness and culture. And what I would like to see is companies move towards environments of healing and of high esteem and respect, and not what's the wage I can get, you for, but what honors your humanity. And if you're going to honor that people are going through a lot, that there's an environment of healing. So I'm curious, I mean, you've worked with Google and Amazon and Accenture and done concerts for thousands of people. Like, what are you seeing, and why is this resonating so much with some of these companies that are just working around the world? Why is it so important for people to be able to see and feel your music?
That's a really good question. Yes, the fact that I was then invited to do these employee concerts and these team events at sometimes a very large scale. Accenture was 10,000 people, in fact. That came as a surprise, and it was also, due also to the pandemic, that during the pandemic, these kinds of employee wellness events and cultural events were sought by the companies. And my personal view of those events is that, especially when it is, teams with Microsoft or with Pinterest and so on, the employees, maybe not all of them, but some of them will really connect with the music that they hear, or the guided meditation that they hear, or the poems we share, because there's already a seed inside of them. And my experience may be a catalyst, really, an occasion for that seed to be woken up. And I was really moved, especially by one review that a person sent, and she was a Google, member of Google. One of thousands of people who reached out through LinkedIn to me and, shared how much she was moved by the music, how much that meant to her. And, when you have hundreds and thousands of people on a Zoom call, you don't know, obviously, who is there and who that may have been. But it was such a sort of, confirmation for me that that's exactly what happens, that you need one event or one person that might spark in you is a certain desire, a certain aspiration that you've always had. And so she was writing, she was going to go much more into listening to music and taking time out and really calm down. And so that's how I view the purpose of these concerts for these companies, for the employees to experience something completely different from their everyday work, and to remind themselves of who really they are, apart from the work and apart from all those many hours in front of their screens if they're working from home, but even their screens if they're working in the office. Everybody is in front of those screens, right? So the screens are really getting between ourselves and ourselves. There's nothing more precious than having a real connection with yourself and, being intimate with who you are and what is going on inside of yourself, so that you understand better how you yourself operate and how the body reacts, for example, which then in turn allows you to understand others much better because you've been through certain things.
Yeah. It is beautiful to me to think that you use the very medium, the screen, and that technology that sometimes is holding us back and dividing us to allow for this experience as well. I'm curious because you've obviously performed in so many different types of settings, right? The big venues, the small intimate concerts in an apartment with Airbnb in your home, and then with this virtual platform. What do these different things do for you? So obviously you are creating these beautiful experiences for others, but what is it that it helps you with, or what does it do for you, and how is that different in the different settings?
So I don't know whether you are familiar with the 5 remembrances by any chance from Buddhist thought. Those are, taken from a very ancient sutra, and they are kind of life guidelines. And I thought I'll share them with you, and maybe already that is my answer. So the first one is, I am of the nature to grow old. There's no way to escape growing old. Second, I am of the nature to have ill health, and there's no way to escape ill health. I'm of the nature to die, and there's no way to escape death. All that is dear to me and everyone I love are of the nature to change. There's no way to escape being separated from all I love. And the fifth is, my actions are my only true belongings. I cannot escape the consequences of my actions. My actions are the ground upon which I stand. And as far as music is actually a very specific art form, because it, sound arises and sound then also blooms and then eventually disappears. And that's really what our lives are going to be following as a journey. And those 5 remembrances are a daily practice to recall to yourself. And it immediately, I think, brings your time and what you want to do with your time into focus. It helps to better determine what your true north really should be, because you really realize that, hey, tomorrow you don't know whether you're going to have this time to do this one thing, call this one friend to thank them, or share this piece of music with somebody who's going to really be delighted by it and maybe carry that, memory with them, and just really be sort of a much happier person for it. So that's what it does for me. It makes me happier. It's not even a question of doing it for other people. It's enriching for me to be able to do that and to have this opportunity, and to do it through the screen adds a really interesting dimension to my meditation concerts, because there can be lots of people connected from all across the world. But at the core of it, what I've noticed is, of course, when you're face to face in the same room, there is a really direct connection. But if you are, really speaking from your heart, and you really truly sharing what you believe, it gets communicated through the screen. There is no barrier to what you can communicate through the screen. I have a friend who was separated from her husband through the entire pandemic. They had, she was pregnant, she had to have the baby, obviously. They couldn't be together, and they were able to nurture and construct and, make beautiful their relationship regardless of that immense distance. It's really a mental thing before it is, I think, a physical thing. If it was the other way around, we would know, I think. If all you needed for a wonderful relationship was the physical contact, we would know about that.
Wow. Yeah, I have a question for Shivani because I saw she was reading those. Like, what are you, just what insights or what are you experiencing right now in
Yeah.
this conversation?
I mean, I am so appreciative and in admiration of people who can live their life and make decisions based on that kind of core concepts of what they believe to be true, right? So for you, those five remembrances and having that North Star for all of your actions and reminding yourself and kind of coming back to those and circling back to that, I think that is um, such a powerful thing and something that often many of us are lacking, right? Where we haven't figured that out yet for ourselves, and we haven't taken the time to develop those strengths of faith and belief to be able to then guide our decisions. And so I think I admire that was immediately your answer to my question because it is what guides you.
Yeah, and I think you truly, in the leadership world, for us, the word character is really important, which is just the ability, I think probably would relate to number 5 of the remembrances of, you know, there's consequences to your action. And we've seen in the last couple of years that, we've saying a lot, crisis reveals character. Anyone can be great when it's good, but what happens when it's hard? And you've shared that even with your mindfulness, meditation, stillness practice, is that it's practice, and character takes practice. Honoring values takes practice, and I'm really struck with that, and I'm struck by you having the character to honor what you said. And I'm looking at this sentence from your bio, and it really, really spoke to me because this is what you did for me. We also talk about the word catalyst here as making room for people's best to come alive and creating space. And you said that your mission is to inspire people to come into stillness and listen to their own inner voice so as to realize their full creative potential and to dare to be who they are meant to be. And that is just, you are, I don't know if I've shared this with you, you're the first person who ever said you felt I was a poet.
Mm.
And you have inspired me to write. And I've continued to write letters to words. And I modified one I wanted to share with you. It's very short, but it evolved, and I think you've done this for me. And the poem's called To See. And it says, if you see, your heart will open. If you see, the sun will shine brighter. If you see, your potential will come alive. If you see, you can just be, but only if you see.
That's so true. It's so true, yes.
I kind of reflect back on what you were talking about with the brain and how we can be in scanning mode, right? Which our eyes are still open. We still are looking at things, but in a very superficial survival mode type of way. But to truly see, you have to be able to shut that down, right? We have to be able to feel comforted, come into stillness, be safe, to truly actually see, right? And so I think all of the ways that we find, through music, through mindfulness, meditation, the ways that connect us to be able to get to that space and feel comforted and safe so that we can truly see and then evolve because of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's been very interesting research done about the way in which when you intently, really with intention, look at the person who's in front of you, and you really have fully all your awareness on just looking at them, not listening to them and in your mind already trying to compose an answer, or reaction or something, but really just focus on them. Research has shown that generates a real benevolent attitude towards that person. Just by the simple fact of really being with them with the fullness of your being. And I think that's something that may have been getting more and more difficult in our world, where people are really harassed by all the different obligations that they really feel they are, under, and zooming and zipping from one thing to the next and so on. And so there's a real, hardening in the way people are together in society, whether it's in shops or whether it's, we don't even have to go to the real huge crime and violence that's going on too. But, the rapport, as one says in French, the relationships between people have become more brutal, words and responses, and it's part also of the growing division in society, that's observable across the world, American, but also Europe and in other parts of the world. And that may be very well connected to the fact that one can hardly, expect people anymore to just be really there for whoever they're in front of, because they're so frazzled and so, all over the place, basically. So that's really it, to learn how to really appreciate what's there in the moment, and to be aware that all that counts is this very moment. Because whatever you do right now, by definition, prepares the future, right? And if you take care of this present moment, you take care automatically of the future, and you create beautiful memories, as Thich Nhat Hanh, my teacher, so beautifully explained, and that's I think one of the one of the motivations for me to create beautiful memories with people. Yes. Yeah.
And we're going to give everyone a chance to create some beautiful memories right now. Why not? You see her, if you're watching, you see this incredible Steinway piano. She's in her apartment where I was just 2 months ago. And I love that you talked about in our prep call too, is that, paying attention, being gentle, and appreciating beauty is now a radical act. And maybe today we could consider the next 10 minutes. Let's see, if you are listening, let's have a radical act of attention towards this. I love that word because it's important to know what we're up against, but also what we're capable of. We talk a lot about what we're capable of and what we can be when we use the power of all our tools, but particularly music and vibration. So would you give us a little flavor or taste of what happens and share kind of what you're going to do?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes. Let me start.
Because they don't, but they're not going to let me, sorry to interrupt, but I have yet to be able to sing in here, Beate. So we got to get the pros like you coming in here.
Yeah. So to lead back to our very start, where we were focusing on our breath and breathing in and breathing out, and that flow really of the breath going through us automatically all our lives, even in our sleep and so on. Let me share a piece that I'm very fond of, because it feels to me like it is a composed meditation on the breath work, on breathing in and breathing out. It's also, though, a piece that carries the title Lovers, or friends, and both of those, but where you also have, hopefully, a give and take, where one person is saying something, another person is answering, and that's also what you guys are creating in this beautiful room together, and making space for sharing and for people being catalysts for others. And so you'll hear in that piece, how someone may be saying something, another person listening and then coming back in. And it's also just a wonderful composition, just as is. And it introduces you to my big friend here. So here we go.
Okay. relaxed now. Oh, what you thinking?
Oh, oh goodness. I feel like there was such, the context of it being about this idea of a relationship, but I could sense the like moments of joy and question and kind of that back and forth that we do as human beings as we connect with each other. I could certainly kind of hear and sense and feel that through the piece.
Yeah, and I love that it's called Lovers and Friends, because you can kind of feel both of that, and also how you can have friends that you love, and but I'm just struck I feel music, and the feeling of just continuing to quiet, my body feels so much quieter. Like when you stopped playing and paused, our producer Brian has said before that, pauses are really good. And remembering not to always fill space, because those 10 seconds that will, like, all of a sudden I heard the audio. There was no audio, but I heard the headphone for probably the first time in 6 months we've been recording here.
Yeah.
And it's always been there,
Noticing.
hasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's about noticing the small, subtle things.
Mm-hmm. Lovely.
Is there another one? Maybe we'll do one more that is meaningful to you in some way. I know all your songs probably are, but and anything you want to ask us or to reflect upon before.
Yeah, there's one piece I could share with you, which I'm very fond of. It's by Mozart. The piece before was by Scarlatti, Italian composer. And so this piece now is by Mozart, and it's a very special piece in very many ways. It's quite a meditative piece. It also feels almost, freely composed and almost improvised. One of the really interesting thing about the piece is the theme. So you hear the single note, and then it reaches down and up again, and suddenly we land in this interesting harmony, which is really kind of magical and mysterious at the same time. And it is a harmony, a chord really, that is relatively rare, and it is literally, although I don't want to get too geeky, but it is literally a compressed chord. The intervals are much shorter between each other. It's technical term is a diminished seventh chord, but that doesn't really mean much. The main thing about it is a chord that no longer tells you where we really are. It doesn't define the harmony like the piece that I played before. You can feel that we are at home in what's called D minor. It's a harmony that's quite clear. And from there we can go to maybe another harmony, not so far away. But this chord that I just played really is a chord that suddenly brings us into something like no man's land. And it is a moment of complete uncertainty. And by the same token, though, it is for a composer a chord that allows him or her to then go into these very different kinds of directions now are opening up from that base of uncertainty. And so that's really what's going on in this piece. And the chord, this harmony, is at the center of the theme, and the theme is at the center of the entire piece. You hear it many, many times over in a low register. And so, although, the hands are further apart, the harmony is exactly, again, that special chord. You hear it also in a higher upper register. And so when you listen to that chord, it, to my ears, really feels like an open question mark, where you're wondering, oh, okay, now where are we, And one of the things I'd like to ask you to do is to simply listen to that theme that you will no longer miss. You won't be able to miss it because if you heard it a few times. And to listen to that chord, of course, but to also then listen to where do we go after that chord? Where does it lead us? What does it give rise to? Because the chord, when in this piece, you hear that it also brings this moment of stillness with it, right? We come to a real moment of stillness, and then something else arises. One other thing I would like to share about the piece is that it's written in an interesting key. You probably know that composers use keys like painters use colors, except that composers have in tonal classical music less keys to choose from, sort of roughly 40, 45. And Mozart was one of the most prolific composers there ever was. He composed literally thousands of pieces, operas and chamber music and solo music, and thousands of pieces. And so it's basic math that there'll be hundreds of pieces in C major and hundreds of pieces in G major and hundreds of pieces in E minor, etc., etc. But in fact, what I found out about this piece is he wrote it in B minor, and in fact, he used B minor one single time in his life. Only for this composition, never before, never after. And he wrote it in a biographical context where he was thinking of his father. I personally don't think it's necessary to know what a composer was doing exactly at the time when he was composing pieces, especially in a case like Mozart, who wrote so much, right? And also such universal and transcendent music. It's transcendent because it moves us today. It's not transcendent because it was so meaningful to him, but to us today. So, so before I play the piece all the way through, I invite you to think of a person who you really hold dear, somebody who you completely adore. And each time you hear that piece, think of that person and their beautiful qualities. And that way I'm sure the meaning of the piece is going to be transmitted to you.
Beautiful. And if you're listening, we invite you to think of that person too, that you adore. Who did you think about?
Who did I think about?
Yeah.
Thought about a very dear friend of mine who I've known since college and I absolutely adore, who has shown me her path on how she interacts when things are hard and stressful and does it with such beauty and grace and love and is always so present for people. And gosh, just the opportunity to like sit and think about her while listening to that piece, I feel like I need to call her right now and just say thank you and I love you. But I think that it brought back so many memories of just the stories that we have shared and the experiences that you don't think about all the time. But, certain pieces, parts of the music that were making me reflect on just fun, light moments, but also the hard stuff that we have experienced together or as individuals and have shared with each other. So yeah, and I just feel so calm and still and at peace. I mean, it's like the feeling you get when you've like just finished a massage and you're just like,
Yeah. So,
I just don't want to move from this moment.
no, that's really beautiful. I feel that with your friend because I'm thinking of my friend CJ, Beate and Shivani. He's a guy I grew up with, lived across the street. On that, for some reason, I'm thinking about our third grade teacher, Miss LaVille, and he's just like someone who, similar. He's got 3 daughters. He's a physician. He lives in Nashville, and he has such capacity and warmth that whenever you talk to him, it's just you have his undivided attention. And I'm like, how does this guy even have time to pick up the phone, of all the things he's doing and family and, his father passed away. His mom had got sick at one point. He's just taking care of so much. And then all he wants to do is hear about you when I call. And it's like I feel this, like, you ever talk to someone, it's like they're like a warm blanket. They're like wrapping, they're wrapping around you, and I'm just grateful for that. And, but 30 years, I'm 40 now, a 30-year friendship, probably more than that. And Beate, to you just absolutely, I don't know the right word, there probably isn't a word, just blessing us with your gift and connecting us in the way we are to human beings and humanity.
Well, I'm glad you were able to connect with your friend, both of you, each one of you, and to appreciate that those connections are so precious, right? They really give us energy, and they are the meaning-making things in life, That's also what you take away whenever you go somewhere. For, Jon, for example, he spent quite a few weeks in Paris, and I think, probably for any of us who's been traveling, it's the people who you meet that they're the most precious souvenirs, and experiences that you carry in your heart afterwards.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then we connected that day, and then got a chance to have lunch. And I'll never forget. You said, "Do you want to go to this cafe or somewhere quiet?" I said, "There's somewhere that's quiet. That would be amazing." And you connected me to this beautiful restaurant that we'll find the link and put it in the show notes. But this family from like northern Italy was it, and it's like her and her husband just bring the food out, and it was. I ended up going there twice. It's like, I think I want a meal plan here, but got to meet you there, and here we are today, and I'm so excited for this. And just want to invite people listening, if you were feeling what we were feeling and your organization, I think this work is just so important to access in ourselves. And Beate, as we close out, I know we'll put your website, your Instagram, and ways people can contact you, that you do experiences like this for companies, right?
Yes.
They can contact you and do that,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and then the next time you're in Paris. Yes, I thank you so much for literally making room in your home for people to have this beautiful experience.
Yes, I love the title of your shows. I mean, I think that is a beautiful title to call something Making Room. So congratulations to choosing that. I think that is such a inviting image, right? That's what you are trying to do with your work, each one of you. So I'm really, thankful that people like you exist, that people like you do things. Jon told me a little bit more in detail about what you're aiming for, and yeah, it's great if I can kind of contribute in any way, I can.
Well, yes, you are right. She personifies literally making room in her own living room, internationally on technology. But I think that's what I'm walking away with today, is just the making room for the quiet and the still, and seeing the beauty. And anything you're walking away with, and then Beate, we'd love to just give you the last few words. Anything that you want to share with listeners or that's on your heart today. And
Yeah, I agree. I think, making room for experience and being open to something a little bit different, to something a little bit new, even if it might feel uncertain or feel a little bit scary, but allowing that chance, because you never know what's going to happen, and you might have this beautiful experience or this beautiful connection that comes out of it. So it's kind of what I'm walking away from today.
Yeah. Yes. What I would like to just emphasize maybe is to come back to where we started, of really taking our own lives more seriously, in the sense that it can be a catalyst for lots of other people to live better lives or to have a better time. And for that to be possible, we have to start slowing down and to connect with ourselves, and then, with others. So I think that that's what music can do. There are other things that can also make that possible. But I think music has a special power in that it is somehow, so visceral through the sounds and through the vibrations, and it can really move us and can speak a language that's beyond our spoken human language. It describes, I did quite a lot of work on a composer called Robert Schumann, and he really celebrated the fact that music is a language above all other languages, and it expresses things we cannot find words for. And so that's why I believe also for really important occasions, people getting married, someone, a funeral and so on, there's always music, because it can carry our feelings for which we don't really have words, because they're too defined, And so I think to make room for more music, whether you're a musician yourself or whether you want to sing or whether you just want to listen to it, I think that can be a real way of reconnecting with oneself. So thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this one, stay tuned for part 2 of our interview with Beate Perrey, a noted classical pianist from Paris, where we dive a little deeper into the neuroscience and the effects on the brain and how music can be a force for healing, kindness, and settling us into our best selves. I hope you enjoy.
We invite you to continue making room with us.
You'll find this episode and all of our exciting and meaningful conversations on Apple, Spotify, or really anywhere you choose to listen to podcasts.
Join the Making Room movement and get more info at makingroomwithus.com or follow us on Instagram at Making Room With Us.
Thank you for showing up for us and each other. Until next time.
You are wonderful and full of truth, just as you are. You are wonderful, so full of truth, just as you are. You are wonderful, so full of truth, just as you are, just as you are. You're welcome here, just as you are.